New information on a story breaking yesterday during Happening Now. The assassination of Russia's ambassador to Turkey, with a Turkish government official telling the Associated Press that it was unlikely that the Ankara policeman who shouted about Aleppo before the deadly shooting acted alone. This as both countries vow to work together in investigating the deadly attack. Joining us now, Aykan Erdemir, former member of the Turkish parliament. He also served on the EU-Turkey Joint Parliamentary Committee. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Turkey and Russia have been really on opposite sides, at least taking opposite approaches in the Syrian civil war. Is that what led to this tragedy, do you think?
From the start of the hostilities in Syria, Turkey and Russia were on opposite ends. Turkey was pushing very hard for regime change in Syria. However, with the downing of the Russian jet in November 2014, the two countries came to a crashing course, and after that point, Russia made a stronger presence in Syria, and Turkey started taking steps back. With the normalization of relations between Russia and Turkey earlier this year, we have seen two sides trying to mend faces and find a modus vivendi in Syria. So the assassination came at a very important juncture as Turkey and Russia were trying to find a new deal for Aleppo, a truce and evacuation plan that could allow both countries to find middle ground in Syria.
Do you think the assassination has badly damaged that attempt to find common ground?
Actually, there's a counterintuitive development. Initial observations were that this could lead to a downfall in Turkish-Russian relations, but on the contrary, as we see with the trilateral talks today in Moscow between Russia, Turkey and Iran, the three countries seem to have reached even a stronger agreement. The Turkish government is trying its best to kind of appease Russian President Putin, and when we take a look at Turkey's pro-government media, we see that the coverage is mostly conspiratorial, pointing the finger for the assassination at the CIA, at the US. So interestingly, the fallout from the assassination seems to be on the Turkish-American relations as Turkey pivots further away from NATO and the United States and toward Russia and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
World War I obviously broke out in part over one assassination. There have been fears that this could lead to some kind of conflict between Russia and Turkey, and then, of course, other NATO members would be obligated to defend Turkey. Is it that bad? Do you see something like that in the future?
Actually, I think Turkey under Islamist President Erdogan's rule is increasingly pivoting away from NATO and towards the authoritarian bloc of countries headed by Russia. So what we'll see in Syria is a greater basically cooperation between Turkey, Russia and Iran. Today the initial reports from Moscow point to that there seems to be an attempt to push the US out of the Syria equation. This is of course very troubling for the West. This is troubling for NATO. A key NATO member, Turkey, which has the second largest army in NATO, seems to be moving away from the West, its values, rule of law, democracy, human rights, and seems to be reorienting itself to authoritarianism and crony and state capitalism.
A big challenge for the Trump administration. Aykan Erdemir, thank you. And we'll be right back.